Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, and I would say that this brewery are best known for their New England Hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, and also for their big fruity juicy sours, the Berliner Weisses, the Goses, and things like this. But every so often they will put out a few other styles as well. But it's always nice to see the new beers that these guys are releasing, and it's one of the latest releases that we're going to have a look at today, and I've heard this is quite a good one, so I'm curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully this is another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Duckpond Brewing. So this particular beer is called Dig Dug. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this is another New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for September of 2021. And yeah, they always release a couple of beers every month, these guys, so definitely worth keeping an eye on if you enjoy the styles that I mentioned earlier. But curious to see what it has in store for us, as I said, so let's get cracking with the review and see how we go. So yeah, for this review then, we will, as always, go through a little bit of a brewery history before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Duckpond Brewing before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Duckpond Brewing. So Duckpond Brewing were previously known as Mikrofon-bryggeriet, the microphone brewery in English, and this company is the brainchild of Nikola Sarcevich, who is a singer and songwriter for the band Millencolin, who have been making music since 1993. But the band was originally based in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm, and they took a break, and at this point Nikola went over to Gothenburg to study, I think it was, or just went over to Gothenburg. But in 2013 he began homebrewing with his friend Christian Silva while he was studying international marketing in Skövde. But the two were brewing just very small 20-litre batches together, and then Nikola went to Berlin for a 2-week brewing course. But the two then started the company together, and it was based for a while in Nikola's house and was brewing 200-litre batches. But they changed their name in the summer of 2019, and they've been working to increase their output and international sales over the last few years. Apparently the name change was done mainly because a lot of people couldn't really spell Mikrofon-bryggeriet, and it was a little bit of a more difficult name to remember, of course, so they went with something a little bit more anglicised. But that year they produced around 70,000 litres, and they're one of the owners of the Wizard Brewing brand, along with Morgendagens, who are another Gothenburg-based brewery. But originally they were producing most of the beers at Poppels Brewery in Jonsered, out to the east of Gothenburg, and also in Odd Island, who, if I remember rightly, are based in Mölndal to the south of Gothenburg. They still brew some beers at Odd Island, from what I understand, and they now have their own facility in Kungston as well, and have just hired Magnus Laurén as their new brewer. But as of September 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 45 different kinds of beer under the Duckpond name, and there were previously about 20 or so released under the Mikrofon-bryggeriet name. So yeah, that is all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your brewery history. Let's get on and actually have a taste of the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Actually, all you can just see is Dig Dug. Yeah, Dig Dug, the name of the beer. Yeah, quite an interesting name behind this one, but I'm not sure exactly why. It didn't say on the website why it was called Dig Dug, but you don't really get many explanations for the names of the beers from Duckpond Brewing, of course. But like I said earlier, a 6.5% New England Hazy IPA. This one apparently is hopped with Simcoe and Mosaic. So yeah, this should be pretty nice actually. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So as you can see, for 440 milliliter can, this cost me 45 Swedish kroner, which translates to €4.50, about £4 sterling, and I guess that's somewhere in the region of $5.50 American, something like that. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Let's go for it. Oh, smells nice already. You can smell that. I think this is going to be very good. So Simcoe and Mosaic, apparently. This should be interesting. Let me just check that that's lined up properly. But there we are. So, as you can see, and as you would expect from a New England IPA, it's poured a lovely kind of bright, hazy yellow colour. So remember, colour depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use, that determines the magnitude of the colour, if you like, you know, how amber or whatever it's going to be. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, if you get a darker colour of beer. A New England IPA like this is going to have a wort boil between 60 and 90 minutes, probably leaning towards the 90-minute end of the spectrum. And with one like this, when it's such a bright yellow colour, that tells you that there's probably not too much in the way of a brown sugary malt in this one. Yeah, it looks pretty nice. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass on this one, and a few going up towards the bottom of the head there, but it looks good. Incidentally, the head poured to be about 1 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white colour. It is fading away a little bit, and it will eventually be just a very thin kind of foamy layer, but I think it works. A lovely a lovely 1 finger frothy white head, but it looks great. Lovely little bit of haze to this beer, but not the haziest of beers that I think we've seen from Duckpond Brewing. But remember, the level of haze depends on the oat and the wheat content first and foremost. The yeast can also play a role in there as well, and there's no real rule about that. You know, it can change from brewery to brewery, recipe to recipe, and so on. But yeah, certainly looks the part of a New England IPA, this one. I don't think there's really much else we can say about the appearance of this one other than that it looks very, very nice. So yeah, pretty cool. So let's see how we get on with the aroma of this one then. It certainly looks as you would expect for a New England IPA. So aroma time. That smells very nice. It actually smells, first impression of this beer, just straight off the bat, it's a really soft and smooth and juicy New England IPA, this one. As I've told you in many reviews now, New England IPAs can take a few different directions. They can be more farmhousey leaning and yeasty. They can be a little bit more kind of rye leaning and grainy, wheaty and bitey, oaty and creamy, barley malt leaning and bready, or they can be a little bit more kind of brown sugary and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of always interesting to take the different perspectives of these, but yeah, quite often they will display multiple characteristics, and you know, this one for me strikes me as being a mix of bready, oaty, and just, you know, fruity and juicy. So this is a really nice smelling New England IPA, but you know, Duckpond Brewing, as I said, they've got a bit of a reputation for their New England IPAs throughout Sweden just now, and it's quite rightly justified. But let's try and break the aroma down for you a little bit and describe it a wee bit more in depth, should we say. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. Or smell, I'm saying it looks very nice. I keep messing up these words, maybe my brain's just going kaput. But yeah, so backbone of this beer then, first and foremost, you're going to get a lovely, soft, white bready backbone to it. You can smell 1 or 2 wee bits of bread crust in there, but lovely, smooth, barley malt, white bready character out of this one. It smells great. And it's very soft and fresh. You can almost smell like the kind of floury notes, you know, that flour that sticks to the bread crust in the beer. But yeah, it's absolutely great. It smells absolutely lovely. But yeah, on the malt base as well, then I think you definitely can smell a little bit of wheat in this one. There is a teeny little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose there, but not overly much. I think the wheat is playing a more smoothing and thickening role, and in this particular beer. So you just get a little bit of the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose there, but lovely, smooth, white bready, thicker wheaty notes kind of coming out of this one. On top of that wheat though, you can certainly smell a lovely kind of almost creamy oaty character coming out of this beer, which I really like. So yeah, it almost gets a little bit sweeter the further that you go into the nose as well, which is great. So lovely big smooth oaty characters coming out of the beer. But yeah, on top of that, you can get a little bit of sweetness out of this one. There's a lovely kind of Werther's Original brown sugary sort of sweetness in this one too, and I just love that as well. I love that. I mean, a very kind of how do we say? I'm enjoying the kind of sweet, smooth IPAs at the moment, and this one really just kind of strikes a chord with me. It's very kind of big and bready. Yeah, it's great. You know, lovely, kind of smooth. You just get a little bit of that Werther's Original character in there, that butterscotchy, you know, cream. Oh, can you say cream candy sort of thing? But yeah, that's coming out of this beer quite nicely. But it actually smells as if it really is going to lean towards that thicker, creamy end of the spectrum for a New England IPA. So I like that. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the malt base in this one, but it certainly strikes a chord with me. So thumbs up to Duckpond Brewing for that. So let's look at the hoppy side of things then. Let's have a look. So for me, there's a teeny little bit of earthiness in this one. That's quite minimal actually. The earthiness really takes a back seat in this beer, so lovely little bit of smooth earthiness in there. As you come further forward, there's a wee touch of a herbal quality, which I can certainly appreciate, but not too much. You know, if it is, I have actually seen, I'm sure I saw that there was another version of this beer with Citra and Brew 1 maybe, if I remember rightly. I think there was two versions of this beer, but I'm pretty sure the one that was released in Systembolaget was the Simcoe and Mosaic version. But the earthiness that you get in this one, if Mosaic is in there, it's very soft earthiness that you're getting out of it. I have to say that. So that's interesting. So just a very soft earthiness in this one. As I say, a little touch of a herbal quality as well, but the green component in this beer really leans towards like a kind of wet and grassy type thing. It really is more like that. You get a lot of wet, kind of fresh cut grass out of this beer. That's what you get on the green component. And a wee bit of a deeper floral note, but as I say, the green component for me is not the most pungent. It's not the most pungent. It's a fresh, wet, cut grass that you get out of this, 100%. Yeah, little touch of a deeper floral note in there. Lovely kind of fresh, wet cut grass, or wet fresh, whatever, wet fresh cut grass, I guess we could say. So the green component is very much like that. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, then when you sugar this beer up as well, you get a slightly more intense aroma out of it. So maybe do that, just sugar it up a wee bit and see what you get. But you certainly get a wee bit more of a kind of intense. You get a wee bit of a brown sugary note coming out of it. You can smell a wee bit touch of the booziness coming out of the beer, but you also get a lovely fruity character to this one. So on the fruity side of things, this does actually seem very familiar, and that makes me think, yeah, probably it is the Simcoe and Mosaic that's in this one, because you get a lovely little bit of you get a nice kind of smooth passion fruit out of this one, and that's always one of the things that you get from Simcoe, especially in New England IPAs. Simcoe is a very smooth but very slightly pungent passion fruit, so you get a little bit of the slightly more pungent passion fruit further back, but you can smell the slightly more oily character. I mean, if you compare it to, like, say, Citra or Galaxy, which will also give you the passion fruit, it's a lot less pronounced, but you still get that lovely kind of smooth, slightly more oily passion fruit out of this one for sure. You get that, and it's quite straight shooting in that sense, but you can get a nice kind of tangerine orange vibe out of this beer as well, and that's Mosaic. That is, I'm pretty sure that's Mosaic in this one. So I'm nigh on sure that this beer is the Simcoe Mosaic version of Dig Dug. And as I say, I'm sure I saw somewhere that there was a Citra Brew 1 version of this, unless it was called like Dug Dig and I've misread it or something like that. I'm pretty certain there was another version of this beer. But that might have been on Glassbanking that I've seen that when I've searched the name of the beer, because I always look at Glassbanking as well just to check the stats of the beers and stuff. But yeah, it's quite, it is a very soft, just juicy one, this, and quite straight shooting. So tangerines for me, and then a soft kind of oily passion fruit, and of course you've got wee undertones in there, like a little bit of apricot and, you know, stuff like this. So yeah, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this before you get stuck in. But this is a nice, solid smelling New England IPA for me. So let's get the rest of it in the glass, and we can have a taste of this then. I'm very curious about this, as I always am with the Duckpond beers. But yeah, this one is the Dig Dug 6.5% New England IPA from Duckpond Brewing in the Gothenburg area on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, and cheers. Let's go for it. Oh, that's nice, and it's big and oily as well. This is one of the more oily and juicy New England IPAs that I've had from Duckpond Brewing in recent times, at least. That's really, really nice. So thumbs up to Duckpond Brewing for this one. Once again, I think they've done a solid job of that, actually. But then again, I always enjoy the Duckpond beers. But yeah, first impression of this one is really smooth, bready. New England IPA for me. There's a wee bit of wheat and oat and things in there, but yeah, quite smooth, definitely. Green component is leaning a bit more towards the floral than I thought it was going to be from the aroma, but the fruits are lovely and big and oily in a sense, so I really like how that goes together. Big thumbs up to Duckpond for this. This is absolutely solid, but so well done, and I'm not surprised. You know, these guys are a damn good brewery in my experience. So, yeah, I think this is good. So let's try and break this down for you a little bit, and just and see where we go. So middle third of your palate, back third of your palate. We'll start as we always do. Across that middle and back third of your palate, there's a nice little bit of a kind of bready, bread crusty sort of thing. You get that straight away. So nice kind of bread crusty elements there, but on top of that, you do get a lovely kind of smooth white bread, and I would say that the white bread actually comes across as a little bit sort of wet and dense in a way. So that's kind of interesting, but as you always get the slightly smoother flavours towards the front of that middle third of your palate, and the more kind of grainy ones coming out a little bit further back on the palate too. So that is quite interesting. Yeah. And on top of that, it's actually the malt base is really very nicely done. So we'll focus on the middle third of the palate for the moment. So either end of that middle third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a more kind of grainy, bread crusty sort of thing. Slightly denser bready notes in there, and then on top of that, there's a wee bit of kind of thicker, wheaty kind of character, which I very much enjoy. And then you can just feel the wheat is quite smooth at the same time, but it's really just thickening out the beer. But on top of that, you've got more of a kind of smooth, oaty character coming out of this beer, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, that goes together really well. And I think the oats really start to dominate a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. You can feel the oats going right down that middle line of your tongue. They're quite dense there then as you go out towards the edges of the palate. It's quite just smoothing out and almost sweeten up a little bit. But sitting on top of that oaty kind of note there, you can feel a nice kind of sweet circle. You get the sort of you get a little bit of the kind of Werther's original butter candy sort of thing coming out of this one. So you can feel a little bit of that kind of sweetness in the middle of the palate here. But whatever they've done with the malt base in this, I think it is pretty damn nice actually. So yeah, it goes together really well. So thumbs up to Duckpond Brewing for the malt base once again. But as I say, you kind of expect a good IPA from these guys. You've seen me review many of these now. But one of the breweries that I always keep revisiting. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's look at this. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of, you have got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. You do get a wee bit of that. As you move further forward, the beer is kind of slightly, it has got a little bit of herbal quality in there, and I do suspect the earthiness comes from the mosaic, because mosaic always gives you a wee bit of earthiness. And it's interesting too, because we didn't pick up so much of the earthiness in the aroma, but you do pick it up in the flavour, and I've always found that's a trait with mosaic actually. But as you push further forward, you get a nice big kind of floral aromatic sort of thing out of this one, and it's quite a nice deep floral aromaticity as well. But remember, your New England IPAs tend to rely more on late edition and dry hopping, which is the type of hopping that gives you more kind of flavour and aroma. The early edition hops are the ones that give you the big bitterness, and you know you do usually a little bit of early edition hopping in these beers, but yeah, this one is very, very smooth in its green component. It certainly doesn't feel like the most bitter beer, but we'll come on to that when we do the mouthfeel section. But yeah, nice kind of slightly deeper floral green component to this one, but at the same time it does actually feel quite wet. But around the front curve of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of grassiness in there, but again, like as I said earlier, a wet, fresh cut grass sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, green component is nice, and you do get a little touch of zestiness off it the further that you go into the aftertaste. So yeah, I think it works really quite well. Yeah, green component is nice. Just a very, very smooth beer, this one overall. So let's look at the fruity component then, the front third of your palate. So border region, as we say too, between the kind of, just thinking about that. It's kind of interesting. I actually think we missed doing the back third of the palate in this one, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, we never actually did the back third of your palate, so my brain's having a brain fart in this review again. So let's just go back to that. So the back third of your palate, you do say a bit more bread crusty character in there. On top of that, you get the smoother, you know, kind of thicker, dense white bready character there. You do get a wee bit more of a bitey wheat on that very back third of your palate. Then on top of that, you can feel the more kind of airy yeast kind of thing. So as I always say, when you go at the back of your palate, you can feel the flavours a little bit taller. Then as you come further forward, the flavours just kind of condense down a little bit and seem a wee bit more squashed together. Then as you continue into that front third of your palate, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of that bready build up there, a wee bit of bread crust, but the base of the front third of your palate is a nice kind of smooth, soft, white bready character there. And then on top of that, you get that nice, pardon me, oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that then, now that I've solved my apparent brain fart. Yeah. Yeah. So fruitiness, if you know these hops, is pretty much what you'd expect, to be honest, but still very, very nicely done. So base underneath this, as I say, a bit of a kind of more dense white bread and a wee bit of oaty character sitting on top of it. But yeah, as you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of a more, slightly more pungent passion fruity note there. And as you move further forward, it does mellow out really nicely, and it just gives you a slightly kind of oily character. And as you reach the kind of midpoint of that front third of your tongue, there's a bit of a juicy mango in there and a wee bit of a more apricot-y type character. So yeah, I do like how that goes together for sure. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's distinctly more oily and orangey, and that is the mosaic all the way. You get that big juicy tangerine note coming out of it, which I really like. Yeah, Love it. Big, juicy, oily tangerines for me right on that front half of the front third of your tongue. And I think that's the thing that really oils up the beer. Simcoe is an interesting one because it gives you a big oily character in a West Coast IPA, but this is kind of juicy and oily at the same time, which is, for me, is really interesting. But the fruity side of this beer, I think, is very, very nicely done. That's what makes this one stand out for me a little bit. So yeah, all in all, solid beer from Duckpond Brewing. But as I mentioned earlier, not a surprise when it comes to these guys. So yeah, I think we can round off the review then by taking a quick look at the mouthfeel. So overall, I'd say this beer is pushing towards the kind of top end of mid-bodied. It's a very, very smooth beer. It's actually, you know, quite creamy, but yeah, it's kind of quite creamy. But as you go further into it, it does become a little bit slick at the same time, which I find really interesting. So kind of big and creamy, yeah, but then a little bit oily and slick the more that your palate gets used to it. In terms of IBUs and things, I would say that this beer, I think this is a fairly standard, you know, 25-30 IBU, and it does get a little bit more bitter the further into the aftertaste that you go. So yeah, I think this is a fairly standard 25-30 IBU beer. So nothing too much to report there. But on the fruity side of things, it's lovely, and you know, it's got a lovely balance between juiciness, oiliness, and slickness, and I really, really enjoy that. The fruitiness in this beer, I think, is just bang on the money, and that's why I always enjoy reviewing these Duckpond beers here on the channel. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. Really cool to return to Duckpond Brewing. I've been missing these Swedish beers actually, even though I've had a really good selection of stuff back in Scotland. I have been missing these Duckpond Brewing beers. So yeah, awesome stuff. So this one was the Dig Dug, a 6.5% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Duckpond Brewing, based in the Gothenburg area, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast. Another awesome beer from these guys, and I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on this. So yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Duckpond Brewing, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys on the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.